Veränderung, Comatose, change within me. It was early December of 1970, one of the coldest winters Bavaria had seen in years. Temperatures dropped down to 20 degrees below zero. We lived just outside of Munich, Germany, in my hometown of Marktschwaben, which was entirely covered by a blanket of shimmering snow. The plows could barely keep up with the heavy downfall, which greatly amused us children, who were always ready for the next adventure. For us, deep layers of fresh fallen snow created the most magical winter wonderland Bavaria had ever seen, or at least that we had ever seen, and our days were filled with play and laughter. I remember this time fondly. I was just 9 years old, full of energy, dreamy-eyed, and bursting with youthful innocence, anticipation, and joy. It was my favorite time of the year. I could barely contain myself as I waited for all of the celebrations, keeping myself busy with snowball fights and building snowmen alongside of my friends. The Christmas season was lavished with merriment and mystery. The celebrations began with the 4 tapping nights, Klöpfelnächte, along with the nights before Nicholas Day. On the 6th of December, and in only 3 days' time, it would be Krampus Day, dedicated to one of the companions of St. Nicholas in some parts of Europe. These traditions ran deep, creating eagerness and delight. In Austro-Bavarian folklore, Krampus is a horned human-like figure who during the Christmas season punishes misbehaving children. This year, I was quite sure that I had been a good girl and would not be getting any of his attention. I was equally confident that St. Nicholas would be visiting. I'd been good and would be receiving some hefty gifts for my outstanding behavior. To end with St. Nicholas was the most rewarding and light-hearted of the ceremonies, often causing us to nag our parents, begging them to get us to the present sooner than was ever possible. I couldn't wait to be old enough to go with my big brother and his friends to the village, where we'd find men disguised in Krampus costumes, where children run from them as they're being chased. It was a long-standing tradition, folklore, I wanted to take part in. Even though I had been suffering with a cough this season and wasn't feeling very well, I wasn't going to miss the festivities of the day. I pretended I was quite well, even though my chest was hurting and the occasional wheezes let loose. On this particular day, my brother had lost his gloves on the way home from school, and my mother was in a hurry to drive him to town. She had to buy a new pair before it got dark and the roads too slippery. When my mother returned, I begged her to let me stay at my aunt's house for the night. I just loved any and all opportunities to spend time with Maggie and her new and handsome husband Jürgen. I remember Mother not being too happy about me staying due to my persistent coughing. But I didn't give in, repeatedly urging her to let me go stay overnight. And finally got my way. Their home was a bright and colorful place, filled with a medley of refurbished antiques as well as modern furniture. Their guest bed hadn't been delivered yet, so I had to sleep on the white leather couch in the living room. I wasn't able to get warm, and the cold shivers running down my spine kept me awake. My hacking cough didn't let up all night and only got worse. They say that the lungs are one of the last organs to mature in the womb. When I was 2 years old, I had had several episodes of whooping cough and colds affecting my respiratory system permanently. My lungs were already quite weak. I had been, after all, a premature baby, born too early, weighing maybe 5 pounds. The next day, Maggie took me to her family doctor, Dr. Holley. He had his office in Bahnhofstrasse and had known me since I was young. He was aware of my whooping cough history and so was quite upset when he heard my cawing and barking noises. With sternness, he ordered my aunt to take me out of the freezing cold and back home immediately. That was no place for a girl in my condition during the thick of winter. I faintly remember being in his office. My violent attack was so severe that I regurgitated a golf ball-sized lump of mucus, solid and scary green in color. He prescribed some medicine called Lebertran, cod liver oil that tasted so putrid that it made me gag with that horrid fishy taste. He claimed it was sure to relieve my symptoms. "You will feel better by evening," he stated confidently. I wasn't quite so sure. Bundled up in my favorite cozy blanket, my mother, in her sweetest voice, whispered she loved me, kissed me on the forehead, and gave me the Lebertran. In her gentle way, she lovingly tucked me in on the living room couch, leaving with my brother to do some necessary errands. She assured me she would be back as soon as possible, since the center of our little town, Marktschwaben, was only 5 minutes away from our house. She was in a hurry and had to go. It was only 3 o'clock in the afternoon and already getting quite dark, with huge snowflakes falling outside and getting heavier by the minute. Extremely exhausted from coughing all day, I lay on the couch feeling content enough and just to rest. I enjoyed the warmth of the house as I watched the fluffy snowflakes dance in the wind outside, eventually falling onto the moonlit balcony in front of me. I slowly drifted away into a sound sleep. Out of the blue, I remember waking up with such a terror, my body jumping in uncontrolled panic. I found myself desperately gasping for air. I sounded like a barking seal at the circus, or maybe something worse, as I flailed around this way and that, just trying to get comfortable. My cough seemed to become worse, and my sleep was restless. In between coughs, I was making a strange crow-like noise. It reminded me of a wheezing sound I heard from my friend, who I had watched having an asthma attack, scaring me to death. My chest below my ribcage sank inward with each breath I tried to take. I knew something wasn't right when I touched my ribs and felt how displaced they seemed. Gradually, as I lay on the couch, I started to withdraw from my body, drifting away from consciousness. Barely conscious, my body shifted and jolted in spasms again. Out of dazed desperation, mustering all my strength, I stood up, raising my arms above my head, frantic to open up my air passages so I could breathe. Each time I attempted to breathe inward, my airways tightened even more. I finally gave in. Suddenly, Everything turned quiet as the snowflakes falling. A beautiful humming began to fill my ears. Very peaceful and quiet, fear and terror left me. I fell to the floor and rolled under the glass coffee table. Eventually, how much time had passed? I don't know, but the chest pain stopped, and I began drifting toward a bright light, not of this world. I slipped out of consciousness, withdrawing from my body. More time passed, and I heard my mother's voice calling my name from a distance. Petra, Petra. She pulled me from under the table, and I was aware of being in the living room, and once again I felt the unbearable tightness in my chest as I gulped for oxygen. She screamed at my brother Wolfgang to keep me upright, commanding him to keep me moving and not allow me to lay down where I might become unconscious again. My mother told him to help me walk around the house a bit. In my delirium, I must have climbed the stairs for some reason and almost fell down the stairs when my brother took his attention off me for 1 minute. My poor brother. Immediately, I heard my mother call for my dad to drive us to the nearest hospital in Steinhöring, a town 15 kilometers from us. No air to breathe. At 14 years old, my mother had been hospitalized in this old place, Kinderkrankenhaus, also known as Children's Hospital. She had contracted the poliovirus and was paralyzed for 2 years. The worst part, besides the pain, my mother had told me was the disturbing emotional ache of being locked away there, unable to hug her own mother or sister, except through a dingy institutional window, made her feel like a prisoner, afraid and alone. Later, I would learn more about this hospital, one with its roots in dreadful Nazi evil. It was in 1935 when a most feared Nazi, Himmler, created a secret Nazi program called Lebensborn that took place in this hospital. Deemed racially pure young women were taken from their families and isolated in those cavernous walls to meet SS officers, to become pregnant so that they could bring more racially pure into the world. Nazi authorities believed that these Lebensborn children would be purebred Aryans, perfect future SS leaders, given to the SS to train from birth. These children would become the new nobility that would dominate the world. At least that was the plan. I knew none of that horror at 9 years old. I have tried to imagine what it must have been like for those poor women. I cannot. But I do know that for my mother, Steinhöring was always a dark time, a dark place, even though she was sent there after World War II. For me, now, in this time and place, I had been admitted into a room and placed in between the hospital's sterile sheets to be cared for. I had no fear or disturbed feelings. Instead, I felt light and peaceful in a state of altered consciousness. Personally, I can't say I recall much about the space itself, since I was so sick when I blacked out. I don't recollect the car ride or being carried into the hospital room either. However, I do remember hearing that same soothing humming sound in my head. It faintly reminded me of a gentle breeze on a warm summer's day, nature's music I would experience as I would run through the fields and play. My awareness was not of being in my body. Rather, I floated upward. Still light and peaceful, I came to some kind of altered consciousness at Steinhöring, not in my body. I started to float, hovering on the hospital ceiling. Not in my bed at all, which felt strange. I suppose words are hard to come by to describe it completely. During this experience, I witnessed my body from a distance, observing its every move as my spirit, without notice, moved along the walls of the old hospital. How was this possible? What is happening to me? I faintly recall asking. I continued to watch from above, high on the ceiling. My father stood down there next to me, leaning against my motionless body, holding my hand close to his heart, his tears falling on my lifeless face. I could feel his sadness and aching heart. I knew he didn't think I was going to make it. Maybe this was a part of the Steinhöring legacy, the giving and taking of innocent lives. Yet I wasn't worried. I wasn't Petra in her hospital bed. I was hovering above them, an unaffected observer. My mother in her red fox coat sat in the dank corridor. She was on a bench, reading something, black pen in hand, her face pale. She appeared numb with dismay, a horror no mother wants to endure. Somehow, in my out-of-body state, I knew she was signing a document to consent to a dangerous surgery. I remember thinking, poor Mummy, watching me on the edge of death, in the same dreadful place she had to remain while ill in her childhood. Momentarily, I felt as if I was slipping into her body, mind and spirit. I could intensely feel her sorrow and despair. Her potent emotions came over me in a vibration of dread and sadness. I then traveled into an operating room, where 2 doctors in their light green baggy scrubs and several nurses vigorously scrubbed and washed their hands. I had a bird's eye view. Wherever my attention focused, there I was. I could see clearly. I felt what everyone was feeling, as if I was able to slip inside their bodies and read their minds. Experiencing their every emotion, every shift, didn't seem odd or scary. I felt calm and neutral, unemotional, as I moved through the corridors, processing the dynamics of life below. I remember trying to get their attention, thinking I had called out to my father, "Papi, Papi, I'm up here." Then I said something like, "Don't cry. I'm all right. You don't have to worry about me." I continued, I'm up here. Look up. I'm on the ceiling. I'm fine." But my puppy only continued to stare at my lifeless body and couldn't hear me calling out. What is happening to my spirit? Why is my body lying there, yet I am on the ceiling looking down at my body with such a sense of calm? I recall feeling this inner knowing that everything was perfect on those cream white walls, when suddenly my spirit shot through a tunnel much like a vortex of clouds, illuminated by a bright white light. I was flying like a bird, up through the sky. I felt this strange energy project me through the light with such enormous speed. It was as if I was enveloped by this brilliant ray inside and out. The sun was hugely magnified in a way I'd never seen before. I felt safe. It was otherworldly and intoxicating to my spirit. I eventually found myself in an edifice that appeared like a gigantic library with a multitude of floors and books reaching into the vast sky. The joy, love, and peace prevailed inside me, feeling free and incredibly warm from the inside out. The humming sound reverberated throughout this tall library. It all seemed strangely familiar. In an instant, I stood next to seemingly wise old men. They reminded me of the ancient Babylonians, dressed in simple cloaks of white and brown, or the Franciscan monks in Bavaria. One had a hefty old book in his hand. He read from his leather-bound book. As I stared at their handsome, weathered faces, I felt like I had known them before, and they knew me. I felt I recognized one man in particular. He had the most peaceful and kind-hearted face. There was a bluish light emanating from him, and his eyes were so blue and bright that I wanted to get lost inside of them. I recognized him as Jesus. The instant I set eyes on him, I could not conceive of a more loving face and eyes. Jesus and the other elders were talking about my fate. United in their care and concern, we were one. They weren't talking like humans talk. Their conversation, telepathic consciousness. I could somehow perceive their thoughts and deep message of love. Not a little girl anymore. I felt timeless and one with them. No identity, no borders. I felt truly at home in their affection, their compassion. I asked them if I could stay, but no, they smiled at me the way a loving father smiles at a daughter. And then it all went blank. The following morning, I woke up in the intensive care unit in a huge room with old wooden floors. There was only one other young child in a meager crib with a strange mushroom-like growth on his mouth. His abnormality frightened me. I closed my eyes so I didn't have to see it. Now awake, I felt the pain and suffering in this old hospital that reeked of rotting wood and iodine. It felt nothing like home. The peace I had just experienced gone, and I didn't like it. When I looked away from the child, I heard the creak of a heavy door, like that of a medieval castle. High-heeled shoes echoed down the corridor, and then the familiar voice of my mother. I could barely make out what she said. "Herzelein, Herzelein, you made it. I could not live without you." She kissed my face and stroked my hair. My aunt held my hand. I tried to speak, but I couldn't utter a sound or open my eyes. I heard my mother relay to my aunt that I had suffered a serious attack of the croup, but the doctors didn't have to do surgery. Instead, they spent a great deal of time suctioning off 1/2 liter of mucus. To be safe, the attendees had wanted to keep me for 2 weeks. What happened? Why was I back, and how long had I been gone? I had no idea. My limbs, my entire body was exhausted. Then it happened again. The peace returned, as if God Himself was holding me in His arms. It seemed I floated in a warm liquid, and the soothing humming sound, like Tibetan chant, was all around. I was terribly sick. My mother still worried, but my trance-like state seemed to envelop me in such a deep bliss that I have very little memory of what went on around me for the rest of my recovery. I often reflect that it must have been really difficult for my mother to visit me in that place with the many painful memories she must have endured, even though she didn't always show it or talk about it, even though I knew. And how hard it must have been for my big brother seemed pretty clear to me too. After all, he had to watch me suffocating and delirious when he was just over 10.5 years old, a young boy unable to do anything more to help. When I returned from the hospital, my brother told me he had been so scared he was sure he had almost lost me down the marble stairs, with me so wobbly and unpredictable in my feverish state. I remember the very concerned look he had in his eyes when he told me he thought I was going to die in that old hospital building. He was so glad to have me back. I will always remember his caring words. There is nothing he could have done differently. Yet to this day I wonder, and I hope, that he does not carry any guilt or shame about any of this in his heart. And yes, life went on as usual. One morning at breakfast, not long after I returned home from the hospital, I told my mother about the light and about Jesus, when she gently put her index finger on my lips and said, "Shh, we will never talk about this. Little girls don't talk to Jesus, and if you do, they will put you in an insane asylum." Never to be spoken of again to my mother. I knew I was lucky to be alive. That was for certain. Decades later, as I researched the suspect history of Steinhöring, I often wondered if there was a reason that both me and my mother had experienced such severe illness in that place, and we both survived. Had there been a purpose to this coincidence? The Nazi SS called the space Lebensborn. Difficult to translate. I find that it means something like fountain or source of life, which is pretty ironic considering how the Nazis operated there, how its purpose had been to give birth to people who might go on to control and exterminate others. Their plan, fortunately, didn't work. I learned Himmler tried desperately to use his control of the Nazi security services to get large numbers of children in his army. His stock was considered genetically superior, mostly from the occupied countries. Increasing birth within the Reich was proving difficult, so Himmler decided to harvest genetically valuable material from others. I always found this so sick and disturbing. That meant non-Reich women were sent there without their consent. How sad it must have been to be a Polish mother removed from your family only to serve a baby factory. Decades after my hospitalization, when I was on my own and out of the country, I went on to work with Jewish people who would help open my eyes to what had happened in Nazi-controlled Europe. I had no idea about the hospital, nor most of what happened in Bavaria and Germany. Mostly, I wasn't told a thing. When I found out about the Nazis later in life, I wondered, was shocked really, about why nobody talked about the hospital, its roots, nor much about Nazi Bavaria at all. I learned that after the American army liberated Germany in 1945, there were over 300 orphan children housed in Steinhöring. The building remained a children's hospital until 1971. It is amazing to me that I was hospitalized there during the last year of its existence. Was I part of its transitioning? I surely hope so. The heavenly encounter I experienced, and having my life saved, seemed only to confirm my suspicion that there was a reason for being there in its waning days, before it no longer served as a hospital, especially in the way the Nazis intended. Before the war, Steinhöring was a former Caritas Catholic charity children's home. The Nazis took all church charities and controlled charitable giving. The general physician at Steinhöring, Dr. Ebner, was the Lebensborn physician. He became the medical director for the entire Lebensborn program and SS Oberführer. I also learned of his mass killing of handicapped children and was devastated. I felt this for all the children, but I can't help but think of the rare instance of talking about the war when my mother would tell me that she would have been killed if she had had polio earlier than she did, while the war was still happening. Now it makes sense. She wouldn't have been genetically superior. She was ill and couldn't walk. There was no room for the sick or weak in Steinhöring during the war. It was a shocking revelation. No wonder my dear mother was so horrified to be locked away in Steinhöring. Clearly, she knew more than she ever told me about the place. The significance of her being stuffed away there to recover for several years is not lost on me. Maybe my alternate experience I tried to share with her helped release some of that burden she felt. I don't know. I will never know. Today, the building is an in-home care facility for 1,000 handicapped people with a staff of 400 employees. When I hear that Steinhöring is used to house and assist so many needy people, it makes me feel as if maybe, just maybe, it can free itself from its confusing and sometimes morbid past. And maybe I wasn't the only one who got free from the walls of the hospital on its last walls. Something unexplainable had shifted inside of me. It was good. I was changed. I couldn't fully comprehend why I felt different and strangely detached from my family and my life as it was before. I suppose it was odd that I, as a 9-year-old girl, wished I could go back to the place of peace and love forever. It was home.